I'm Dr. Darin Detwiler, author, professor, columnist, and advisor on food safety and food policy. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about the importance of studying food safety laws and regulations. Some 30 years ago, when we started talking about food safety like we do today, the conversation was primarily around meat and poultry. As we've seen over the last while, this conversation has grown to include produce, ready-to-eat foods, commercially packaged goods, and foods that we get from any means, whether it be a grocery store, a restaurant, ordered over an app, delivered to our home, a food truck, partially prepared, etc. But when we talk about food safety and foodborne pathogens, one must understand that it's not solely from eating contaminated food, whereas people can become sick from a foodborne pathogen through person-to-person contact, waterborne exposure, animal contact, and even in some cases through airborne exposure. Also, while everyone can become sick with a foodborne pathogen, it is the most vulnerable populations, the very young, those with a compromised immune system, those who are pregnant, and the elderly, who are most likely to become reported cases, hospitalized, and even die from a foodborne pathogen. We can look at food safety and regulations through a variety of lenses. First, let's look at the supply chain. Food safety and regulatory policy is essential at all stages of the farm to fork spectrum, at the source, manufacturing, packaging, distribution, transportation, commerce, and all the different forms of commerce that we have today, and obviously for the end user. Another way of looking at food safety is to look at it through the four main social science perspectives. Geographic: how does food safety impact or is impacted by the environment, land and water, natural resources, and even movement of food and people? How is food safety impacted, or how does it impact the economy, cost, value, markets, wages, etc.? Socially, we can look at the idea of consumer behavior, family, health needs, and the resources that families have at their disposal. And finally, politically and legally, we can look at the idea of laws, regulations, policies, our various systems, and even court decisions that impact food safety. We look at food safety and regulatory policy is through 5 pillars, if you will. Quality, such as appearance, smell, taste, packaging, location, like where is the store, where is the restaurant. Safety, biological contamination, chemical contamination, physical contamination. Food defense, bioterrorism, sabotage, and economically motivated adulteration. Food security, access, sustainability, and nutritional value. And food authenticity, counterfeiting, theft, fraud, overrun, etc. What we can find is a multitude of connections. If we look at it in terms of corporate social responsibility, we can see that there are various economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic responsibilities within the food supply system. Corporations at the heart of our food supply need to take into consideration these various responsibilities and how they align with these 5 pillars and with these 4 social science perspectives. But even more so, when we start to look at the idea of consumer and workers' needs, physiological, food, air, water, sleep, safety and security, such as health, family and social needs, self-esteem and self-actualization. What are the alignments here? We can't hold that food safety is an ethical consideration, therefore not a primary consideration for corporate social responsibility, but then look at the idea that food safety is one of the most foundational elements of human needs. Another way to look at this is just how interconnected. It's not just food safety or food authenticity, it can be both. It can be a food defense issue and a food safety issue. It can be a food defense issue that has political and legal ramifications, or a food safety issue that has political and legal ramifications, or a food safety issue that has social impact. Everything is interconnected here, one way, shape, form, or another. Further, we can look at these various perspectives and pillars and see how they align with our United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The idea of looking at equality and environmental justice and other issues that will help people around the world, and just how interconnected these 17 goals are with food. When we look at technology, we talk about things like blockchain, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence. Obviously, we can consider the technological literacy needed and the data literacy needed. But in terms of food safety, the real value comes when we can take in consideration human literacy. How are we using the technology? What data are we looking for? What are we doing with this data? When we have this intersection of these three areas is when we truly have an impact on food safety. The best way to have this impact on food safety is through mitigating failure. Here is where we best prioritize, invest, and train on food safety at every level. In my book, Food Safety Past, Present, and Predictions, I talk a great deal about the impact of Upton Sinclair's 1906 novel, The Jungle, and about the literary review of the book from the London Daily Times. Talks about how the things described by Mr. Sinclair happened yesterday, are happening today, and will happen tomorrow and the next day until some Hercules comes to cleanse the filthy stable. It's just as true today as it was over 100 years ago. But what does it mean about this Hercules? In my perspective, food safety requires a Herculean effort, an enormous amount of work, strength, and courage. So, what is the importance of studying food safety laws and regulations? To build a true food safety culture, the workforce must be well educated in the basic principles of food safety.
Perhaps the real importance of studying food safety laws and regulations is, if not for yourself, then for your friends and loved ones.